अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. Welcome to another episode of Hafta. This is the weekend preceding Diwali, so a very happy Diwali to you. Shwee, 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 with some things.
Please don't imitate firecrackers.
Shwee, shwee,
We've
shwee.
been running.
That was horrible.
Green firecrackers.
And also we have a special Diwali offer, as we often do. First of all, thank you. Shwee, shwee. That's not the offer. You know, I have such childish colleagues. I don't know how I maintain my calm. But coming to the serious issue of the Diwali offer, we have a 20% off on 3-month and 6-month joint Newslaundry News Minute subscription and 25% off on the annual joint subscription, and 10 of you special people will also get a gift hamper. If you avail of this offer, there is a QR code flashing on your screen right now, and there is a link below this video window. So click on it if you're not a subscriber and avail this Diwali offer. And if you are a subscriber, you can avail it by gifting someone a Diwali gift, which is both illuminating. It is all about independence and the light of truth and public interest journalism funded by the public and not corporations or government ads. So light the way for democracy and avail of the NLTNM Diwali offer. Now let me introduce our panel to you. In the studio we have Manisha Pande.
Hello.
Shardool Katyayan.
Hello.
Our very own Jayashree from Chennai joins us.
Hello.
And also joining us from Delhi is senior Indian journalist and diplomatic editor of The Hindu, Suhasini Haidar. Hi Suhasini.
Hi.
Thank you
And
for joining
happy
us.
Diwali in advance to all your listeners and viewers and
Yes.
readers.
Shwing, 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 as Manisha would say.
Green firecrackers, that is.
Green firecrackers, whatever those mean. Before we get into the headlines, Suhasini had some constructive feedback and criticism, and which is why we always say, in fact, that is one of our vision documents, the initial document of why Newslaundry exists. No one should be above scrutiny or critique, including us, especially us. So Suhasini has some feedback about a piece that we carried, critiquing and criticizing, or as Suhasini would say, trashing the women journalists who participated in the, what should we call it, the Taliban press conference? What's the...
Taliban press conference.
Yeah.
Taliban. Suhasini, please. Yes, Suhasini, tell us about...
No, I mean, it's part of our discussion. So why don't we start with
Okay.
what happened and then we will bring
Okay,
in
we'll do that.
whatever our feelings are.
Done. So, let's get into the headlines. Jayashree, please do the honors.
Yes, so here are the headlines of the week. Delhi court has framed criminal charges against Lalu Prasad Yadav, Rabri Devi, and their son Tejashri Yadav, who's also Bihar's leader of the opposition. This is in a case of alleged corruption in the railways. They face charges of corruption, criminal conspiracy, and cheating. All three have pleaded not guilty. Meanwhile, ahead of the Bihar Assembly polls, the Congress has released its first list of 48 candidates. This is after days of uncertainty and an impasse over seat sharing within the Grand Alliance. A student of South Asian University in Delhi has alleged that she was sexually assaulted by 4 men in a deserted part of campus. In her statement to the police, she claims that hostel staff discouraged her from contacting the police or telling her family. She also claimed a security guard physically covered her phone when she tried to call her parents. The Supreme Court has allowed the sale and use of green firecrackers in Delhi and nearby NCR under certain conditions. This is as GRAP Stage 1 has been imposed in Delhi NCR. The air quality is now poor ahead of Diwali, and I think this is true across North India as well.
Yes, and just so those of you who don't live in NCR, even when there was a complete ban on firecrackers in Delhi, firecrackers on Diwali were
Yeah.
exploded with complete violation.
We did a story last year.
Now that green firecrackers are allowed, these are just orders
हाँ.
नाम के वास्ते.
अच्छा कैसे पता चलेगा कि ग्रीन फट रहा है या नॉर्मल फट रहा है like so silly है.
Nonsense.
After IPS officer Puran Kumar died by suicide alleging casteism, the police have now booked his wife and 2 others. This is for abetment of suicide for the death of another man, an assistant sub-inspector who was found dead from a gunshot wound. The ASI left behind a purported suicide note which accused the late IPS officer of corruption. I find this entire
Yeah, very
story
murky. And he
It is
has
so
defended in his suicide note the people who that earlier guy had accused
Yeah,
of...
Puran Kumar. Sandeep Kumar has left a video that the Puran Kumar was a corrupt guy and he committed suicide because his corruption was about to come out.
Yeah, it's just very
It's
murky.
a very murky, disturbing.
Too convenient. Bhupati, a central committee member of the banned CPI Maoist, has surrendered in Maharashtra. This was in the presence of Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis. He carried a reward of 6 crore on his head. The WHO has warned against the use of 3 cough syrups that are found to contain unsafe levels of diethylene glycol. It targets specific batches of cold drift cough syrup, which is manufactured in Tamil Nadu, and 2 others that are manufactured in Gujarat.
Although I was quite encouraged to see that, I don't think it may be a very insignificant association of doctors who have said, why are the doctors being arrested for this, man? For prescribing a medicine?
No, there was one case of a doctor, but he was getting a kickback, right?
Yeah.
He was getting 8 rupees
Sometimes
per
if you
bottle.
directly prescribe it,
Right.
Even if you get a kickback, Indian government allows medical representatives. It is the government and drug agencies' job to ensure that the drugs are manufactured well.
Right.
A 26-year-old software engineer from Kerala was found dead in Trivandrum in what the police suspect was a suicide. He left behind a pre-recorded video where he alleged several RSS members had sexually and physically abused him during his childhood at a shaka. Meanwhile, in Karnataka, Priyanka Kharge has demanded the chief minister ban all RSS activities in government institutions and public spaces.
Yeah, that has led to a lot
I think there's plenty wrong with the RSS and I will always point fingers, but also it is a fact that abuse in India happens in every single institution, schools, colleges.
Yeah.
This happens to be an RSS space, but I don't think it is indicting the RSS specifically in a meaningful way.
Right.
Next, the Supreme Court Collegium has said it's revised its recommendation to transfer a judge after the union government asked it to reconsider. This is Justice Atul Sridharan from the Madhya Pradesh High Court.
In fact, interestingly, he has been transferred from 3 different high courts where he was in line to become the Chief Justice of that high court. And now he's been transferred to Allahabad where he has no chance of becoming Chief Justice. Before that, Chhattisgarh, and which was a state before that where he could have become Chief Justice because he was in line. He is the judge who had ordered an FIR against BJP Minister Vijay Shah for controversial remarks on Colonel Sofia Qureshi. He had ordered an FIR against her. And he has been transferred around trying to ensure, at least seemingly, that he should not become the Chief Justice of any high court.
I think he was transferred out of Jammu and Kashmir.
Yes.
At the time, he was the second most senior judge and he could have become...
He was in line to become the Chief Justice of that.
Correct.
And then Chhattisgarh as well.
Now in Gujarat, all the ministers in the Bhupendra Patel-led government have resigned. This is ahead of a new team that will be sworn in tomorrow. That is sworn in today, October 17th. The cabinet, which currently has 17 ministers, is expected to expand to 22 or 23.
Right.
There's been an outcry after the Afghanistan foreign minister has visited India because on October 10th, women journalists were barred from a presser at the Afghan embassy. India's MEA clarified it had no role to play, and Afghanistan said it was a technical issue. A second press conference was then convened 2 days later, and this included women journalists.
And we will discuss this in more detail with our guest, Suhasini Haidar.
Donald Trump has claimed that Narendra Modi agreed to halt India's oil imports from Russia. However, India has clarified its priority is safeguarding Indian consumers. And the MEA spokesperson also said, I am not aware of any conversation yesterday between the two leaders.
They are not aware. They didn't say it didn't happen.
Yeah. This is diplomatic speak. I love it. I should learn it. And finally, Trump and the leaders of Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey have signed a declaration which is pledging to act as a guarantor for peace in Gaza. This is following the first phase of a ceasefire during which Israel and Hamas exchanged prisoners. And those are the headlines.
Thank you, Jayashree. We'll discuss that in some detail with our guest, who is a professor from Jindal University. But let's get into the first issue right now. So we did have, this was not just a headline in the Hafta this week, but all over the world, this has been a headline for the last week. The historical peace potential. Many cynics, and Suhasini will tell us whether they should be called cynics, because I've heard many podcasts on this, including from the New York Times and the Rest is Politics and NPR, and I read a piece on CNN. Some say the celebrations are premature. They are just to make Trump feel good. We are still very far away from peace. This is not peace. This is just a pause in violence. So tell us a little bit about that. But before that, the issue that you're here for is the Taliban press conference. Why did they come? Is it embarrassing for the Indian government that they allowed a press conference where no men were allowed? And what pressure caused them to have another press conference where women were allowed? And can we use that pressure to get our Prime Minister to also have a press conference?
At all, for anyone. Thanks a lot. And of course, this was the big story. But, interestingly, this is one issue that has got Indian journalists headlines, and that too positive headlines, I think, after a while, around the world. I'm looking at BBC, CNN, Deutsche Welle, and all the rest. They have all spoken about the idea that Indian journalists got together and were able to make at least the Taliban foreign minister implicitly the Ministry of External Affairs to change its mind. And how did that happen? Essentially, Taliban foreign minister, who's known as the acting foreign minister of Afghanistan, it's a government that India does not recognize, came to Delhi for a big visit. The big visit was to herald the normalization of ties between Delhi and Kabul. And you've been seeing a lot of close cooperation being held out as a potential between Delhi and Kabul, India and Afghanistan. India has agreed, the External Affairs Minister Jayashree announced that India will upgrade its mission in Kabul right now, which is a technical mission, to an embassy. That really means that India will now send a diplomat to Kabul and presumably, because these things happen reciprocally, accept a Taliban diplomat in Delhi. But that is in the future. Right now, the Taliban does not control the embassy in Delhi. The embassy in Delhi still pledges allegiance to the previous government, which is a democratically elected Republic of Afghanistan, and its flag. So you just need to understand that as the context for what happened next. The foreign minister's team reached out to a number of news organizations. I think the first number was 12, and then it was expanded to 18, and directly invited certain correspondents to that press conference on Friday. So this was a week ago. When the journalists showed up, perhaps they didn't realize because each one was going in separately. But once they had all congregated, it became very clear that there was Taliban all-male delegation was speaking to an all-male Indian journalist delegation. Perhaps at this point, and I completely take that point, that nobody really was focused on this. There were other things going on because, as I said, the Taliban does not control the embassy. They tried to bring in their white and black flag to replace the big flag. The embassy staff pushed back. Then somebody out of his pocket pulled out a small white and black flag, put it on the dais. So there's a lot of things going on in the middle of all of this. A press conference ends, and we all have by now realized, because it was streamed, that there were no women at the press conference. I checked with some of my colleagues. I said, were you invited? Were you invited? In each of the cases, because, we have a lot of foreign policy journalists covering the MEA beat. In each of the cases where the organization was invited, it was a male who was invited, not a female. I myself was not invited. My colleague was invited. I have to add, I was actually out of town that day. But there were a number of women journalists outside the embassy as well who were not allowed in. So it was very particular that this was, 25 men from the Indian side, including the video journalists and the Taliban delegation there. So at this point, we started to ask around once it became clear on our WhatsApp groups that women just weren't there. It's not just the women that felt bad. It was the men as well. In fact, we got apologies from men saying, I'm so sorry. We should have literally done something there.
Sorry, Suhasini, the invitation had come from the MEA. Is that correct?
No. The invitation, that's the surprising part. The invitation came from the Mumbai Consul General of the Taliban, who is basically working with the Taliban. The Delhi embassy still does not.
So they don't have Qabza of Delhi embassy. They have Qabza of Mumbai. In Malabar Hill, they have that.
Mumbai and Hyderabad essentially report to them.
Right. So where did the press conference happen here in Delhi?
Inside the embassy, though, because the Ministry of External Affairs, this is what the embassy people tell us, The Ministry of External Affairs said to them that if you don't allow them to hold the press conference there, it will be seen as an anti-India act. This is, I mean, something we've reported, Indian Express has reported as well.
Also, it conveniently gives them a none of our business. It gives them culpable deniability that the MEA says it's there.
And at some point, I do want to talk about that whole Vienna Convention thing of whether it was sovereign or not.
Okay.
Anyway, so this is what happened. We asked the MEA very clearly. I mean, there was on the MEA group, there was a very clear question. Did you know in advance that women have not been invited? And second, are you protesting the fact that women were not invited? Have you given any kind of a démarche? Because you can do that. You may not be able to prosecute someone inside an embassy, but you can certainly say, I don't like this. The response from the MEA was not involved in this press conference. Just that's it. They would not budge from there. When I asked off the record if they were planning to say anything directly, they said, no, this is not our concern. I said, does it concern you? They, even questioned whether this was discrimination. It was just 25 journalists who were chosen from the MEA group. They just
How lame.
Well, I'm just telling you what I heard. But the fact was that by then, Saturday, every newspaper had headlined with the fact, all-male press conference. Everyone on television was talking about it. TV had already started talking like for hours the day before. I think the press, the bad press, as well as the public outrage that followed, forced either the Taliban or the MEA to put pressure on the Taliban. And by Sunday, we got this invitation saying, please do come, all are welcome. Because I wanted to make sure now they don't do it as just an all-women press conference.
So there was a Janana, so it doesn't become a Janana and a Mardana press conference.
Exactly. And so that's essentially what happened. We went to the press conference, there were women, there were men, there was this very powerful moment, I think, where we walked in and our male colleagues who'd been at the press conference 2 days before, who had frankly backed us up on all our questions to the MEA, said we are vacating the front row so that he has to take questions from women. There are only women in front of him. And this nobody asked, but they said, we've had that press conference. It's your turn. It's your day. You ask the questions. So actually, our male colleagues who'd been at the previous press conference did not ask the questions. Some people think that may be a little too much. I, in fact, protested. I said, no, let's just have a regular press conference. But they did make the point that let the questions be asked. And the questions, the women who asked the questions, all of them, well, including myself, asked about the condition of women in Afghanistan. One question was asked about, why didn't you let women into your press conference? These are a technical error. It wasn't intentional. But the rest asked and then backed each other up. So if he answered and did not give a convincing answer, somebody else asked the question again and said, but what you've said is incorrect. That's where my quibble with the Newslaundry piece on this press conference is, because it says he came, he saw, and he got away, which I didn't think he got away. I think he had to answer 3 or 4 times. Not that he was going to change his opinion, but he made a few points when, we questioned him. We said, look, women cannot go to school past 6th grade. President Karzai's own daughter can't go. That women can't go to college. Women cannot work anymore. How can you say that women are free, that there's no problem in Afghanistan, that, yes, girls are getting an education, even if it's not in school? How can you say this? And he made a few points. He said the education of women is not haram. This is something that shows that there is a difference between those in Kabul, like him, like Stanekzai, the deputy former minister. Haqqani has also said publicly that women should get an education. And the Kandahar rulers of the Taliban, as it were. And he also said that they were looking for ways to change the situation, but that the first priority was peace, at which one Indian journalist turned back and said, what is the connection between peace and girls in school? And I know for a fact that they felt that they had been challenged in a way they have not been challenged before. The truth is, I got a message from an international journalist in Kabul who said, I'm so glad that you all put his toes to the fire, simply because these are not questions he gets asked, and he doesn't take press conferences in other countries of the same sort. So it was a unique moment. And for the Newslaundry piece to say he just came and got away and what a shame it was to miss that moment, I felt, especially when Indian journalists are being recognized, rightly or wrongly, but they are being recognized for having at least made the Taliban foreign minister uncomfortable, and uncomfortable enough to more or less say he does not support the denial of girls' education. He may not do anything about it. The fight for girls to be educated and work in Afghanistan, it has still not been fought. That is a much bigger fight. But I think for that moment about, and I've written this in the Hindu today, if you'd like to read my notebook, to say that our primary goal was about media access, and it's a fight we fight along with journalists around the world, India, US, because there are governments that don't want to do press conferences, don't want to take questions, decide what questions you can ask, and all the rest of that.
And we know that back home only too well. But before we move on to the panel and come back to Suhasini, I had 3 specific questions for you, Suhasini, and a bit of information for our audience. One is, in case you're wondering, like, what does it mean that Taliban is running the government in Afghanistan, but the embassy here is not in their control, etc. This has actually been for a while, ever since Taliban took over. The consulate generals or the ambassadors or whoever the diplomats were in different embassies and consulates, especially because I know the one in Bombay, they did not agree with the Taliban. So there was this limbo that they are still, representing Afghanistan here, but not representing the government. Also, the Bombay Malabar Hill consulate, in their premises, it's a lovely sea-facing property, and just at the end of the property, there is this half-constructed multi-story building, which apparently just before the Taliban took over, the guy who used to be the consulate general there had apparently sold to the builder and fucked off to London for apartments. So it's half-constructed.
That's awesome.
It is an amazing bloody property on Malabar Hill. Each apartment probably go 40, 50 crores, but anyway, it's lying like that. So it's this bit of a mess. So, in that context, you had said in the beginning, Suhasini, that the Indian government does not recognize the Taliban government. If they're going to be re-establishing these diplomatic ties, does that mean we will officially recognize the government? That is question 1. Second is, the embassy, you said, is still controlled by diplomats who owe allegiance to the previous regime. So how does it actually work here right now? Who are they representing? And is that one of the reasons why the Indian government doesn't know whether to recognize them or not? Or is there some other more complicated reason?
So it is very complex diplomatically. The United Nations does not recognize the Taliban as the official government.
I see. Okay.
Of Afghanistan. And India has stuck with the UN. There is only one country that has violated what the UN has said, and that is Russia. Russia now has given formal recognition to the Taliban. In fact, at a recent meeting where India was also present, Pakistan was also present, they announced that they were now inducting the Taliban foreign minister, the same man, Mr. Mottaki, as a member, as opposed to an observer of what is called the Moscow format.
So we are just following the UN convention, or whether they recognize, we are not making any...
On that.
Okay.
So is that also why he had to get permission from the UN or whatever to travel? Is that
That's not exactly. Mottaki himself, Amir Khan Mottaki, was a mujahideen who joined the Taliban in 1996. He more or less grew up in Pakistan. He was trained there. And in 1994, 95, he joined the mujahideen fighting inside Afghanistan along with the Taliban. When the Taliban came to power in 1996, he became the Minister of Education. So if we're talking about girls' education, this is particularly the person who first enforced these terrible, illegal, and what I've described as abhorrent rules stopping girls from education. In 2001, even before 9/11 had happened, and then, all that Osama stuff happened, in 2001, January, Amir Khan Mottaki was put on what is called the UN Security Council's consolidated list of designated terrorists. These people who have been designated as terrorists are designated for a number of reasons. In his case, it was because he was a member of the Taliban government.
Right.
And the Taliban was a declared terrorist organization. They used to carry out these attacks and kill civilians. And essentially, it means three things. They are not allowed to access arms. They are not allowed to travel without specific permission, and their accounts are expected to be frozen by all authorities that adhere to the UN. So if they live in Pakistan, then freeze their assets there. So this is our fight on Lashkar-e-Toiba and all the rest. Amir Khan Muttaqi is on the same list that Hafiz Saeed is.
Wow.
And Jaish-e-Mohammed chief or Masood Azhar and all the rest of that. Amir Khan Muttaqi was a part of that government when IC 814 happened and the Taliban took charge of Masood Azhar and then
Oh, I
handed
see. Okay.
Okay, I'm just giving you context over here. Just let me know when I'm running on too long. So he had to take permission from the UN Security Council Committee on Counterterrorism that decides on whether he can get a waiver. So when the Taliban went to talks with the US, they got waivers to go to Doha, for example. Similarly, India applied, I think, in September, and it was denied. And then again this month, and it was accepted that he could travel from 9th to 14th of October, which is what happened. The last point here is that the world is divided on what kind of embassy they have. Many just shut down the Afghan embassy. They said if you can't, if you don't have a government anymore, there's no need, there's no point. They gave asylum to their diplomats and they shut them down, like the US, I think the UK as well. Then there are countries in the East, and there are European countries that, like India, maintain the republics' embassies, and they actually help them, they support them. Then there are, and Japan as well. Then there are those like China, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Central Asian countries, Gulf countries, and a few others who have accepted a Taliban ambassador and actually have allowed the Taliban tricolor to be taken down and the the Afghan tricolor to be taken down and the Taliban's white and black flag, which they call the flag of jihad, up. So the question now is going to be, is India going to follow suit with them, or is it going to be on this side? Is it going to allow that Taliban flag now to fly on Shantipat?
Or will they, since, should they still have that real estate if they're not a recognized government, should that land be given to Adani to build a luxury apartments, which is also an option worth exploring, I would say. And also just a bit of trivia, the marital status of this gentleman who had come is unknown. Did you know that? We don't know. Like, if you Google his marital status, it's unknown. Does he have a wife?
There's a lot of hypocrisy here, Abhinandan, because a lot of these Taliban leaders, their daughters are actually studying, but outside the country.
Which is why they leave it as unknown. They don't reveal, bhai, wife hai, bachche hai, so no one knows iska kya hai situation.
But Suhasini, can I ask you one question? So everyone is pushing back at the idea, I guess, that India is pursuing geopolitics and is engaging with the Taliban government and so on. But given India's entire long history with Afghanistan, do you actually think it's very surprising? Like, isn't that what geopolitics is about? Like,
no, not at all. I mean, let's be clear. Engaging the Taliban is something that many have told the Indian government to do since 2012. Since the London process and the Taliban began to be recognized, then America pushed Qatar to set up the Taliban office in Doha.
Yeah.
That's not something new. Engaging the Taliban, speaking to the powers inside Kabul is it's a no-brainer. The question that many have asked, and you said people are pushing back. To be honest, what we saw for the last few days has been, this is real politics. This is how it goes. This is pragmatism. India is making friends with a country that is at war with Pakistan. It's a no-brainer. My enemy's enemy is my friend. So the question is now not just how you engage. The question more or less is whether you engage or not. The question is, how far are you willing to go? Because this is a singular government that has denied at least 50%, if we're not talking about the minorities that have fled the country, at least 50% of its population, women, not to study or work, right? So it's a question of, are we going to bring it up? So, for example, could the Ministry of External Affairs have invited him, got the UN to give him permission to come, and then sat him across from a few women officers? But chose
Okay.
in Hyderabad House to have only men on their side. Whether the Taliban mandated it or we were being extra polite and saying, let's stick with your culture, whatever it was, or we were making the case that we don't have any women officers on this particular issue, so we're not going to have them there. Whatever it was a missed opportunity to put a woman there to say, I'm not comfortable with the way you treat women in your country. Some things are not about internal matters. There are universal declarations that we have all signed on to and that we all believe in. Second, could the MEA have in its opening statement of External Affairs Minister Jaishankar or in the joint statement said, we certainly hope that the Taliban can create a situation that is equal for all its citizens? Was that possible? Was it possible for the MEA to not have given him full protocol? Because this is not a government we recognize. Did the minister have to meet him at all at delegation level? He could have called on the minister and held talks with more junior MEA officials. Did we need to, give him that platform to go to Deoband when other Afghan leaders in the past, when they wanted to go to Deoband, we've been very squeamish about the idea. Did we need to, he was supposed to go to the Taj Mahal when they cancelled it to do the press conference. Did we need to organize the Taj for him or organize this great, sort of platform for him to be normalized? Those are all the questions that are being asked, Jayashree. I don't think anyone is questioning, do we need to deal with the government?
It's like you're dealing with it, but you deal it within a context that at least makes your position.
We send humanitarian aid. We did this, by the way, from 1996 to 2001 also. We gave humanitarian aid. We didn't have any talks with the Taliban. But at the same time, we helped the anti-Taliban groups. We gave visas to refugees. This time, we've not done any of that. Zero visas for anyone but the Afghan Sikhs and the Afghan Hindus who fled.
So I just want to get Manisha in now. Of course, in the context of what Suhasini has said, I just want to point out, since Manisha, happy belated birthday. It was Manisha's birthday. In case, and if you're wondering what to get her as a birthday gift, you can buy a subscription of Newslaundry and say this is dedicated to Manisha. We'll give her an additional snacks for the weekend snacks. We'll give her an additional samosa from your side. So there's the QR code if you want to subscribe, pay to keep it free. And you can just say happy birthday, Manisha, and she'll get an extra samosa thanks to you.
Lucky girl.
And also we have our guest who has joined us, who will be joining us in the next discussion. Let me do the Aupcharik introduction. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Khinvraj Jangid. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Doctor.
I would say Jangid.
Jangid.
Jangid, yes.
Jangid.
Rajasthan.
Is a professor and director at the Center for Israel Studies at OP Jindal Global University in Sonipat. He is also a Comper Fellow at the Elizabeth and Tony Comper Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism at the University of Haifa, Israel. So thank you for joining us. We were just discussing the Taliban right now. If you want to jump in, feel free. Manisha, please go ahead with, you weren't here, but I was watching the prime time coverage of this, and like history began with Modi and it will probably end whenever Modi ceases to be Prime Minister. India and Afghanistan have become friends ever since Modi came around. Before that, there was nothing. Apparently, because of Modi, Afghanistan is very hostile towards Pakistan. Because of Modi, and they have shown stuff like Khuda Gawaz shooting and the most bizarre, like I was watching those news clips, I was like, what the fuck, like what does this have to do with anything? So just so you know, Afghanistan and Pakistan have not got along for the longest time. And in fact, if you ever meet an Afghan outside India and by mistake you say, are you from Pakistan? He will give you such a cold stare that you'll feel that he just kicked you in the nuts, as happened to me when I had gone to watch the European League last year to Germany. I happened to meet a person at the hotel and he had a very Indian sounding Muslim. I said, Indian? He says, no, with a smile on his face. I said, Pakistani. His smile vanished. He says, no. Afghan. I said, okay, sorry, my bad. So that is what happened on prime time. But yeah, anyway, about the press conference, etc.
But this is so bizarre because I remember, I think Suhasini had joined us in 2021 when Taliban took over, captured Kabul. And that time the big criticism was that India was completely caught blindsided. They had no clue what had happened. They had no channels with the new guys who were going to take over. So the criticism was that actually the Modi government completely didn't foresee Taliban taking over. And what would India do? What would our next move be in such an eventuality? with regard to the press conference, I must just a word for Kalpana, who wrote the piece. She's a columnist with us. She writes this fortnightly media column called Broken News. The headline is not her responsibility. That's on
That's
us.
Manisha's.
Yeah, that's on us.
If you need to point fingers, you know who to point.
The first line was, he came, he got his way, then he relented somewhat, and then he left. Kalpana...
no, that's not the first line.
That is the first line. That is the first line. Then he relented somewhat, and then he
But
left.
not the headline. I think that's the quibble.
That has been changed then, because
No.
I read him saying he got away.
He says he relented. He
got his way.
He got his way. Then he relented somewhat, and then he left.
No, but Kalpana's criticism was more on the male journalists. In her point of view, she feels that the male journalists should have boycotted the first press conference.
But they didn't know.
Like Suhasini said, and there's a lot of nuance to what Suhasini says, that, there was a conversation after that. The male journalists then realized that, it was only us. And of course, the fact that Indian women journalists then really stood their ground, asked questions, and were able to push back is something that should have possibly been the centerpiece. I take that. But another controversy was the welcome that they got at Deoband, that Muttaqi got at Darul Uloom Deoband.
In case our audience is wondering the significance of Deoband, it is one of the most powerful seminaries kahinge na?
Yes.
Of Islam and a Islamic particular school of thought in India. It is.
And there was a lot
And also
of...
very good mangoes come from there regarding the sweet stuff. It has some of the best mangoes in the country. Maharashtrians will tell you the best mangoes in the country come from Ratnagir, Hafuz, complete rumors. Come from UP, from the Saharanpur Deoband belt. Best mangoes.
See, this is the insight for which people log into Hafta.
Hafta, that is why.
You would never find this out
Nikku
anywhere
uncle should be there because he gives most irrelevant. Beta, jab hum tumhari umar ke the, kind of things he gives you which have nothing to do with anything.
No, by the way, but like the best mangoes come from Malihabad, not from Deoband.
We'll have this later. Arnab will moderate this debate.
No, so he got a hero's welcome, Muttaqi, at Deoband, and a lot of liberal, Muslims on Twitter, at least I saw Irfan Habib, Javed Akhtar, they were very upset with the fact that a force like this should get this sort of a welcome. People who are decidedly anti-women, anti-women's education, like Suhasini put. And also, we lost Danish. It was the Taliban that, it was a war conflict situation, but he was shot dead. There was that controversy also around it. I don't know. I think it's a little difficult to... Sometimes I feel like people also, welcome these guys without really knowing the full context. It's Taliban, but I don't know. I feel like India, everyone has a phone and then everyone wants to click
pictures. Yeah, but I
and...
do think one of the most convenient, not that people like this Amir person are very savvy, his retort could have been, really unfortunate he died. Did your Prime Minister express any regret when he died? Because the Prime Minister seems to express regret each time any journalist dies. Or is even, slightly inconvenienced. And when this Pulitzer award-winning journalist died, there was complete silence from the government of India, which is disgraceful.
And I think one more thing that Suhasini put forward, which is important to underscore, that when the women journalists asked MEA, there's this thing of, it's okay, it's their wish sort of a thing, which is really wrong. I think at least the MEA should have stood up for their own journalists.
Too much
to expect.
You can't stand up for anything other than Modi. But I think Dr. Jangid wanted to come in on this.
No, it's really not my research area, but I do think it's a significant
That's never stopped
event
me, just FYI.
in the Indian foreign policy. Faiz used to say, "और भी गम है ज़माने में मोहब्बत के सिवा, तो और भी गम है ज़माने में तालिबान के सिवा." If the liberal and the left would care about women issues, then Iran has been a very, very oppressive regime for the last 4-5 decades. You have a country like Saudi Arabia, where some years back, women were not allowed to drive, not to study, not to go without a male companion. I think Taliban isn't the only villain. I think India is in an extremely smart position to engage, and in international relations, such engagements actually bring positive moderations in the radical groups. So I think by boycotting and rejecting Taliban diplomatically, it wouldn't bring any change to the well-being of the Afghan women.
Yeah, and real politics.
In fact, no, it's more than real politics. That's an easy argument. I'm saying more substantially.
Even to affect change, engagement is a better way to affect
It's
change.
Gandhian. None is untouchable.
Right.
You don't hate the person, but you hate or you work against the person's belief system.
Right.
So I think Muttaqi's arrival and the diplomatic engagement is actually one of the smartest things to do in the region, because the region is slipping through more and more radical Islamist thoughts. And if there is a willingness in Taliban to work with India, I think it's a great opportunity. Now, India needs to see how much it can really push. And I think the fact that Muttaqi held a second-day conversation with women in India is really a good takeaway.
Two things. Just one is India's engagement with Taliban, which of course there's a lot of realpolitik, diplomacy, Pakistan, everything. But the average person in Deoband welcoming Taliban or giving them this hero's welcome, it is not necessarily just for diplomacy. It is what they stand for too. And
Yeah, of
that,
course.
I think, is
Sure,
what
sure.
people are pointing at.
Yeah.
That
No, I don't
Could we
think
have better
I
heroes?
don't think we have to walk on eggshells.
Yeah.
There is a very powerful and significant school of Islamic thought in the country, especially in the Deoband area, that if they had their way, would like a Taliban type regime. It is. I have myself met people during my documentary shooting days, interviewing them, heads of seminaries, who believe Sharia should be the way governance works. So
Yeah.
I don't
No
think one
women.
has to kind of sugarcoat it. There are such people. They are significant, they are powerful in their regions, and they celebrate people like Taliban, which is a shame, and they should be called out. So, Hasini, you want to come in?
Okay, so a lot of points on the Deoband. It's not my field, but as you said, that never stopped us from jumping in. The truth is, it's a seminary. There are students there of various ages, and as somebody over there pointed out to me when I said, "How can you allow this kind of visual?" They said, "अगर गाड़ी आ जाती तो इतने बच्चे इकट्ठे हो जाते."
हाँ, वो भी है.
Downplaying, what it actually meant. But at the end of the day, the Deoband, whoever representative, did give a statement saying we are not against education of women. To the gentleman who just spoke, I really humbly beg to differ when you say Taliban is not the only villain. Let's remember, this is the only country, Iran, Saudi Arabia, all accepted. But this is the only country that has by rule made it that a girl over the 6th grade cannot go to school, that girls cannot go to college. If they're in college, they can't. You saw that video of the Kabul University graduates, all men. The point is, they have made it the rule. They have enforced this rule. Women who were bankers, who were clerks, who were in all sectors of business and industry and government, are not allowed to work. Women cannot go to the gym. Women cannot go to public parks. Women cannot look out of a window. And women are not allowed to raise their voice. A woman's voice has been made illegal by one particular rule that the Taliban put out. To say that they are not the only villain, I do think we all have problems in our countries. Gender equality, caste equality, religion equality, all the rest of that. But I don't think we can just normalize the Taliban by saying, oh, they're just like everybody else. There's a little bit of discrimination over there. So I humbly beg to really differ from this idea. Secondly, again, I am not saying that anyone's against engagement with the Taliban. And as I said, it's a no-brainer. People have been saying they should engage since 2012. But it was the manner in which it was done. There's no question that the Taliban is at present an important strategic ally. It is important for India's connectivity. It is important for India's security. If nothing else, it is a way to keep the Pakistan army a little busy instead of plotting against India. There's no doubt about any of that. So I would really just say, let's discuss what we're discussing instead of accusing the other of something that they have not said.
All right. So now we would just want to move on to the next subject, although that is also Suhasini's subject, but she was here only for the first part of the discussion. But in case before going, you just want to give us your perspective on this peace deal. I had explained in the beginning to our audience, how the media around the world has been reacting to it, that it is too early to call it peace, it is only the absence of violence, it is to make Trump look good, etc., etc. Your thoughts on this, Suhasini, before we say goodbye?
So, 3 points. First, if the levels of violence from Israel on Gaza have come down, that is a positive. Although I did see an Onion headline that says Israel promises to not kill Palestinians on such a frequent basis. Essentially, some of the killings are still continuing.
Yeah.
So the first is that the levels of bombardment and all have come down for the moment. The second is that all the hostages are back home in Israel, and the remains of those who have not made it are being returned, albeit that has not been completed, and that is a positive. The third is there is still nothing new that has happened, because we've seen these kind of engagements before. A ceasefire, a return of a certain number of hostages, although these were the last batch. So that is an important moment. But the real question is what happens now? What happens in the long term? Since Israel has in its Knesset said, we will not any longer talk about a two-state solution.
Right.
So what happens next? And can the region see lasting peace without that step being taken?
And also, I think the connect between now, Bibi has to appear before his parliament or in the court for his corruption charges. I think the next hearing date has already been announced.
Mr. Trump told the president...
Why can't you pardon him? Pardon him like I pardon everybody? Huh? Pardon? So, I don't know how his hearing is going to coincide with sparking of any more violence, but that's speculative. But thank you so much, Suhasini. We will see you at the Newslaundry event later this evening. Before you go, any recommendations that could enrich the lives of our viewers?
Well, I think, if they can read the works of Fawzia Kufi, she is a former Afghan politician. She's written now 3 books. And she was born during Taliban 1.0. She writes about all that she has been through. Sorry, her father was killed during Taliban 1.0. She was born before that, but she faced the patriarchy. She faced misogyny as well. She became a presidential candidate, not that she was anywhere close to winning, and now lives in exile. So I would certainly say read a little bit of her before deciding that, the Taliban is just a little more aggressive than the next guy.
All right. So thank you, Suhasini. Have a wonderful weekend and happy
Thank
Diwali to
you.
you.
Thank
Happy
you.
Diwali. Very happy Diwali.
Bye-bye. Right, before we get into the discussion on the possible peace in the Middle East, I want to remind you we have a new Sena project up for the Bihar election. From our team, Atul Chaurasia, Basant and Srinivasan Jain will be travelling to Bihar. Like all our election coverage and all our journalism, it is not funded by the many ads you will see from various political parties that will suddenly come up all over. Our election coverage and all our journalists funded by you. So scan this QR code or click in the link below the video window. Contribute and make sure that election coverage is public interest and raises public issues, because if election coverage is funded by ads of governments and political parties, it's highly unlikely they will raise your issues. So I will let my colleagues do the talking.
बिहार में राजनीति का रंगमंच एक बार फिर से तैयार है,
क्योंकि बिहार में चुनावी बहार है
और इन सब के बीच लोगों की जुबान पर कुछ जरूरी सवाल हैं।
बिहार पर कैसा पड़ा एसआईआर का असर?
क्या नीतीश कुमार 5वीं बार वापसी करेंगे,
या इस बार राहुल तेजस्वी बदलेंगे बिहार की फिजा?
बिहार और बिहारियों से अभी कितना दूर है सुराज, यह भी जानेंगे।
हम सवाल करेंगे उन नेताओं से जो जनता को सॉल्यूशन के नाम पर स्लोगन देते हैं, और पूछेंगे वो जरूरी सवाल जो बिहार की जनता से जुड़े हैं।
इसलिए न्यूज लॉन्ड्री की टीम बिहार के शहर और गांव-गांव तक जाएगी, उन लोगों से मिलेगी जो सरकार बनाते हैं। और हमेशा की तरह बिहार का चुनाव भी हम कवर करेंगे बिना किसी विज्ञापन के पैसे से। हमारी पूरी चुनावी कवरेज सिर्फ आपके दम से है, हमारे सब्सक्राइबर्स के दम से।
हमारे बिहार चुनाव से जुड़े एनएल सेना प्रोजेक्ट को सपोर्ट करने के लिए इस क्यूआर कोड को स्कैन कीजिए और कंट्रीब्यूट कीजिए अपनी मर्जी से,
ताकि हम बिना किसी दबाव के आप तक खबरें पहुंचा सकें
और आप कह सकें मेरे खर्च पर आजाद हैं खबरें।
So, well, you heard the opening views. what do you make of this peace process? Are you as optimistic as many are, or would you count yourself among the cynics?
In international politics, it's generally a very ironical reality. So, yes, there is, in general, much less to be optimistic about many things. But I do think that this ceasefire deal, even if it's a negative peace and just an absence of war, means a lot. And I think Donald Trump is the real subject of this change. Before he made Netanyahu compromise, and before he used leverage of the Arab states on Hamas, he compromised himself. Let's recall in January 25, when he took the oath of the office, he told Hamas, you release everybody before I take the oath of the office on 20th of January, else a hell will break upon you. Next month in February, he had this reckless proposal that Gaza be a beach city.
Yeah.
It would
With
be a
Trump towers.
Riviera. And I'm working to put people of Gaza somewhere else. That's a blatant arrogance. But he had that. He also had this notion, which is a very powerful notion in international relations, and I think it's usually that causes the terrible amount of problem. There are people who believe that peace in IR or in foreign policy is usually achieved by strength and use of force. Now, if you look at Trump, what he did for this peace, or this limited peace, he reversed his reckless proposal that Gaza be a beach city. He reversed the notion that the people of Gaza don't deserve to live in Gaza. And he also achieved this deal through compromise. So he did a very powerful course correction to me, and I think that's important diplomatically speaking.
Which is why they put him on the cover of Time. I mean, it's an earned position. Although I have my view on it, but let me come to the most unpredictable panelist, Shardool, because I never know whether he's going to be the optimist or the cynic, because it depends on the issue. On this issue, what do you make of it, Shardool?
When you're discussing the Orange Man, you're in.
No, but forget him. Just peace in the Gaza.
No, but like, how do you forget him?
Right.
Look, let me point out the ironies. I was very silent during Afghanistan because, what do you say about it? The guy who is in charge of culture in Afghanistan, just a statement to point out. It's the same guy who was in charge of destroying Bamiyan Buddha.
Oh, is it?
So,
I didn't know that.
this is an exercise in lunacy. But coming to Gaza and Philistine, I refuse to call it Middle East also, but middle of what? East of what? That's a British thing. It's West Asia, right? So,
as is Europe part of Asia. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, that's the thing. Like that's a very Biswa joke, I think. Very good one, anyway. So, this is a peace negotiation and quote unquote deal where one party is not the party in framing the terms and negotiating the terms. It's a fight between Palestine and Israel. Forget Philistine. Hamas. They were not the party to this. Netanyahu and Trump sat and discussed it. And we are we Indians, like in Indian media, at least the honest ones, like seemingly honest ones, are aware how psychophancy works. The psychophancy of Trump cabinet is this, that he was trying to be nominated or considered for Nobel Peace Prize. But this year's Nobel Peace Prize is being given for things done in 2024, when this orange buffoon was not president. Nobody contradicted him. So this is the baseline of this peace treaty. Now, Dr. Jangid said that he has grown. He has not grown. He has let go of some of his illusions in favor of other ones. Because he put pressure on Netanyahu, and Netanyahu's own, I think I'm forgetting, there is one Ben Gavir, who's an extremist. The other one, I'm forgetting his name. Smotrich, yes. Smotrich and his section of Netanyahu's government have rejected this deal.
Right.
They did not sign on Knesset.
He's the finance minister, right?
Yes, I think, yes. He's a finance minister. And he was, I think, 3 or 3.5 weeks before this was finalized, was saying that we have decided that there is a lot of money to be made on real estate. And he was speaking this on international forum. And I think I also wrote an article, but besides me writing it, the Washington Post did a beautiful and like harrowing report that officially there was something else, but Boston Consulting Agency was creating detailed plan of how data centers will be set up,
the
how
real
holiday
estate
resorts will be
development,
made.
sure. And Tony Blair's organization has also been accused of being part of that entire
and this
thing.
peace council, Trump will head it. Tony Blair used to be a part of it, but now he's been discarded because he has no clout.
Bad press.
So now, yes, people in Palestine are happy because they are not dying. This is the other reason.
But it is only that limited reason, not for any bigger reason.
But why do you keep hostages in a seemingly like if you're watching fiction or if you're watching anything, to have a leverage? The leverage didn't work. Now, the people have been, it's such an incessant dance of death that you want it to stop. And like you were talking.
And that's all that's happened basically right now.
And you're not sure that the next things would be followed because like Dr. Jangid said, this is more or less the same deal which he proposed in February when he was sworn in. There's nothing much has changed.
And he said that he'll give the green signal to Netanyahu to fight Hamas. I mean, just yesterday, I think, right? He made the statement. So I don't know how long this will last also. Yeah. No, and like he said, just a temporary sort of pause in bombardment. What does that really mean finally for people living there? Where's the rehabilitation? Are they going to get what they need to rebuild? I mean, all that is so far away. I don't think there's a possibility of peace till you address what you did to these people for over 2 years.
Now, will he be held accountable for that is one of the questions, because how I think it was Marco Rubio or was it JD Vance who trashed the ICC in rather unkind words. So whether that becomes an issue, but yes, you want to come in on this before I go to Jayashree?
Yes, I think there's another part of his diplomatic maneuvering. He doesn't have a leverage on Hamas. He actually thought in February that unrestrained use of force by Israel will compel Hamas to do what they wanted to do. It didn't happen. So the failure of the military also made him realize what now can he do. And I think he did something smart. He realized he can't pressure Hamas with anything else. So he used Arab and other regional allies to have the leverage in use on Hamas. But more importantly, and I think Shardool, you mentioned, just call me Khinvraj, I think Dr. Jangid is too serious. I think in 8 years, Donald Trump didn't meet Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Palestinian Authority. In fact, when he signed the famous Abraham Accords in 2020, he in a way humiliated the Palestinian identity and the leadership. In Egypt, at Sharm el-Sheikh, he invited Mahmoud Abbas to come. I don't really think it's a minor event in the regional context. It is almost recognizing the Palestinian state in his aggressive unilateralism that he acted upon. So the fact that Mahmoud Abbas joined, the fact that he met him,
is a climb down.
And it's a big thing. He acknowledges that in the post-Hamas Gaza, there would be role of the Palestinian Authority.
And actually, that is one of the things that also Netanyahu has been accused of historically, that he would not let any other Palestinian leadership come up because Hamas is an easier one to hate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
It's
as
an
long
easy
as
target.
Yeah, exactly.
So you need to really understand that listen, I think it's easy to malign a leader with the intentions. But his actions really speak very differently. Things are really changing. Think of it. A country like Indonesia, it's the largest Muslim country. The leader of Indonesia went to Sharm el-Sheikh, participated in it, because all the Muslim countries and Arab states realize that they have got a great deal out of Trump on the Palestinian issue. I'll tell you 3 more examples. A week before this deal was announced, he said it, no annexation of the West Bank. He will not allow annexation of the West Bank. So he put the radical, messianic Israeli leaders at a very sharp note that, listen, this is not going to happen even if the settlers are really burning villages in the West Bank. The second thing, which is written, by the way, in the 20 points, I think the Arab states made him write that. Israel will not occupy Gaza. Israel will not annex Gaza.
Okay.
There would be no expulsions. There would be no assassination of the Hamas leaders in Gaza or outside of Gaza.
So these are big concessions.
Third, next, he also said, and this is in writing, Hamas leaders who will renounce violence, will say, we surrender our arms, can actually have an amnesty and stay back in Gaza. And those who will not renounce violence can go out of Gaza to the countries that will take
Welcome
them. I personally think, let's look at the reality. I think it's a completely, praiseworthy moment, not because of Trump. Let's really not be obsessed with the orange
I'm sure
man.
Qatar and all have a lot to do with it because they must have been pissed off when they were also targeted, right?
Qatar, you know what happened when Netanyahu went to the United Nations General Assembly, he went to the White House a day after. The first thing he did, Trump gave him a telephone. He called Qatari Prime Minister. He apologized.
Yeah, and that video went... And like Trump, he has to make a reality show of it. It was...
No, I think in the world, by the way, let's look at the world. Trump doesn't really fear anybody in the world.
Sure.
Right? Fine, he can't compel Putin to do what he wants him to do. But he doesn't fear anybody. He does fear the Arab world. He does fear the Saudi Arabia. These are the only countries that don't need him. He needs them. So look at a blatant refusal of Saudi Arabia from normalizing its relations with Israel.
And did they also walk out during their address at the UN?
Yes.
They did, right?
They did. And Saudi Arabia told Donald Trump very bluntly, we will not normalize relations with Israel, period. Trump hasn't spoken any unkind words to Saudis on this. So I think we are forgetting that behind Trump or in this event, a greater Arab action has really succeeded in putting him in place and putting Netanyahu in place through him.
So net, it has been quite a radically positive outcome in a long time, and one should kind of, maybe circumstance compelled him to, but Trump has come out doing something good out of this.
Yes, and I think there's one thing that you commented about, that Hamas was not party to this, deal. Personally, I don't think Hamas deserved to be part of this deal.
Or whether they even want to actually.
Within the Palestinian national movement, people of West Bank are against a Islamic and a jihadi organization that is Hamas. I'll give you an example. On October 7th, I was in Israel.
Oh, you were there at the time?
Yes, I was all through 1.5 years of the war. They killed 10 students of Nepal in a kibbutz. And these were 17 students from Nepal who traveled to an agricultural study program. 17 were there and they were caught in a bunker. Some of them begged that we are Nepalese. They killed 10 of them on the spot. They wounded another 6 and left them thinking they will die. Bipin Joshi was one student, they took him. For 2 years, his mother and his sister...
I've read about this guy.
His mother and his sister have been begging Arab countries through Nepalese diplomacy that please tell people in Hamas that let this guy go. He's a 23-year-old agricultural student. Didn't happen. Mother and sister went to the United Nations Annual Assembly in September to make the case that please release him. Till Monday, the Nepal ambassador in Israel didn't know, will Bipin Joshi walk out of Gaza or he'll come in a coffin?
And what's his status now?
Worst, he came in a coffin.
Right. Yeah,
I personally think let's really relook at the problem of the violence in international relations. If one cannot justify the violence that Israel does in the name of national security, then one shouldn't defend the violence done in the name of national liberation.
By Hamas. Fair enough. Jayashree hasn't come in on this. Jayashree, you have any comments?
Yeah, I entirely disagree. And I'm very happy to malign world leaders without any qualms whatsoever. So I have no worries on that front. So I'm thinking, We're saying Israel will not annex or occupy Gaza, but it literally already does. It controls the movements of citizens within. It controls what goes in and out. It's demanding the surrender of arms as if a genocide has not been already committed upon the people, and not just against Hamas. We're saying that it is literally killing civilian populations. It's not only killing what it refers to as Hamas commanders. And yet we assume that people will respond as if Israel is operating on good faith. We're talking about the release of hostages, but what about the thousands of people whom we are calling prisoners? We're not calling them hostages because they are not white. I think this is the bare minimum. I think ceasefire is step one. I think the ceasefire happens, the genocide has to end, the occupation has to end, the land has to be returned, and then The Hague, and then justice against everyone who has enabled the occupation and the genocide. In my opinion, there is only one state, and that state is Palestine. I believe in living there equally in that single state of Palestine with equal treatment and equal laws. But I do think there must be justice enacted against those who are responsible for what we have especially seen in the past 2 years. And this isn't only a 2-year war. This has been a conflict, as we can euphemistically put it, that has been going on for decades. And I think this is the only long-term view that does not excuse or enable genocide and colonialism and all the trappings of shit that come with it. I feel that there is this tendency of the Western world to be very blinded by the idea of white supremacists. I think it is white supremacy that is the great evil that underpins the project in Palestine. I think we are so blinded that the great Western liberal media talks about this as if it's actually a war instead of a transparently visible genocide. And I think it is one of the most brutal and televised that the world has seen. And yet I think people don't see it as such. And we use very respectful phrases to sort of tiptoe around it. And I just find it so concerning and so strange that it has taken us so long to get to this point, and yet we are still sort of treading over the same, but security and geopolitics and violence. And I find that strange. So,
but
and I
so
don't
I just want to check, when you said one state, are you talking about Gaza, or are you talking about what we know as Israel also should
One
be
Palestine.
One Palestine.
So you don't believe Israel should exist?
I do not support the right of Israel to exist.
Now
no.
that I completely disagree with.
Which I know most people would, but I just feel that my second major rant is the sanctimony of the mainstream media, which I was reading this piece in The Conversation recently. It was by some professor who teaches like ethical studies or something, and he was cautioning against getting your news on Palestine from like TikTok and Twitter and all, right? Because he's like, the algorithm works against you, and instead, you should be really cautious when you're getting your thing. You should get it. But my question is, tell me why is it better for me to then get my news from a mainstream publication like the NYT or BBC or whatever, when they are so openly, blatantly, hostilely whitewashing all the crimes that are committed by Israel, to the extent that we cannot use the word Israel when we talk about who is being murdered and who is being killed. So should I fear this mass sellout of the world's most respected media organizations, or should I fear the algorithm?
Well, I personally think we've of course discussed even in the media rumble at length on the Washington Post's coverage, etc. I think all biases, etc., taken into account, organizations that have a professional system of editorial filters and boots on ground, whether you agree with their biases or not, are definitely a more credible source of information than TikTok and Twitter. For me, that's a no-brainer. Otherwise,
except there are a lot of journalists.
Sure, but so I'll just finish. So I don't think it's a no contest as far as I'm concerned, because then there is no difference between, let's say, an Op India who payloads Gyan from not even having one reporter on the ground, and Newslaundry. So whether, and that is our whole piece on bias and objectivity. Bias and objectivity are inevitable, but is it coming from someone who has a history of first-hand primary source information? And I think that is definitely there. And one can, of course, argue about their biases and their whatever, the prejudices, etc. But just one thing that I would just like to put here, and since we have a scholar of the subject here, of course, I've been consuming this purely because of my age, but of late I have really consumed a lot of information about the Nazi movement, and I think that is one of the criticism, and I think valid criticisms, of Bibi is a very easy guy to hate, just like Hamas is, right? And in so doing, it is very easy to project that to all of Israel. But if you see the context when Israel was born, before Germany started the World War, Did you know Madison Square Garden had a pro-Nazi rally where 20,000 people attended?
Yeah. America is always
Do you
been
know
Nazi
how
prone.
powerful the Nazi movement in
it's-
UK was
yeah.
before the war started?
And it's
So-
over 100 years before. I mean,
Yeah.
that is just the culmination. What
So-
the Jews faced was...
So it's like saying that, and I, come to you after the Jayashree, for your rebuttal to this, and then we let the scholar give us context as well. I think I completely agree. If you have seen the visuals, and there is no doubt Bibi should be tried as a war criminal, but Israel is very contextual. It is like saying, why should, Muslims be tolerated here in India? They came as invaders. You cannot undo history. And in that context, what existed at that time when partition happened, why did partition happen? Bapu was a villain. Everyone was a villain. The world right from the late 1800s to the early 1900s, the world owes an explanation to the Jews. I don't think there is any... I think it's a very difficult case to put that the world does not owe them an explanation. It does, and it owes them a place. Now, one can say what Israel has done today is exactly what they used to fight against.
Yes,
But to say that it doesn't have a right to exist is something that, to me, it's equivalent to saying Muslims have no right to be in India because why did Babur come here?
It is absolutely not the same thing, because we're saying if Israel does have a right to exist, but why does Israel have a right to exist in the same space where Palestinians once lived? By that entire same logic, if we apply it to everything else, then the British Empire would not have been wound up because they have the exact same rights over India. I think it's colonial logic that we are still trying to apply to a state, because we're saying it happened so recently in the past 100 years of history or whatever, that therefore we cannot look beyond it and say that this is wrong. And I feel like there is no question of the current apartheid state continuing. I think South Africa is the best example that can and should be followed when you're talking about like a truth and reconciliation regime that exists. I think there has to be a single Palestine which has Jews, Muslims, and Christians coexisting, but after this process of truth and reconciliation. And the argument that I always get to this is that Israel won't do it. But that is not the point.
Shardool.
Yeah.
So I have a lot to say. So
No, not a lot. We have running out of time. We have a scholar here. We let him say a lot. You say yours briefly.
No, because there a lot of points have been made. So what Jayashree said, and what the example you gave, I think it fits on India-Pakistan. Because the sort of the creation of Israel and creation of Pakistan is almost the same timeline, right? Mm-hmm. So I agree with the existence of Israel. But what Khinvraj, the point made, these two violences, and I sort of agree with Jayashree, cannot be compared. Like, imagine this in any other country's context. Like, if Pakistan attacked India, like, we are intimately aware of our Indian sentiments, would we be justified in wiping out scores of generations and leveling Pakistan? No, we will not be. These two are not comparable. Again, Abraham Accords are, for all intensive purposes, they are following it. They are doing it in Sharm el-Sheikh, but they are dead. Because being friends with America right now is being held hostage by American power and their dependence on their finance and their defense treaties, right? American public especially is very antithetical to providing security to anybody else but themselves, right? So Abraham Accord, and you can see it in Saudi Arabia, how quickly they finalize their military record with Pakistan. Because they need security guarantee besides the US. So Abraham Accords, and I predict they will be over. Every country which was dependent on US for defense has increased. That includes Germany, which is a significant thing in world affairs. Sure. Significant increase in their defense budget, building their own capabilities again. One more thing, the West Bank issue. It is not just Hamas. Look, I don't agree with Hamas. We've had this discussion before on this panel. But people find their ways to resist which are available.
Sure. If you wipe out any option, then I could really agree with that. Yeah. So, what does Khinvraj mean, by the way?
It's a Marwadi Jodhpuri name. It means satisfied.
Khinvraj, satisfied. That means you're the last child.
I'm the youngest.
Youngest, yeah.
How did you guess that?
Satisfied, bas. Okay.
After 8, I have 6 elder sisters, 2 elder brothers.
All right.
I come from a village near Jodhpur.
Okay. So, okay, closing thoughts on this whole thing. But before we close, because you are also a professor of anti-Semitic studies, I had a question about anti-Semitism. So just, leave 5 minutes for that. But on this, all that you've heard, could you give your closing thoughts?
I'll give my closing thoughts with a with a book and a philosopher. After Edward Said, there is a one person that have emerged from the Palestinian society as their philosopher. His name is Sari Nusseibeh. Sari Nusseibeh was the president of the Al-Quds University in Jerusalem, which is a Palestinian university. In 2012, he wrote a book called What is a Palestinian State Worth? Published from Harvard University Press. And he really ponders into the use of violence. And he, of course, brings Gandhi into it. He brings Nelson Mandela into it. And he really makes a larger point about the Palestinian people and their inevitable choices. He warns them that Hamas and an Islamic, jihadi, violent temptation, because this is the time Fatah lost to Hamas and Hamas took over things in Gaza. He was deeply worried about it, and to be very sad for his fears, that's what happened to the Palestinian issue. Palestinian issue, much before Hamas, was remarkably represented by people like Yasser Arafat. If you really look at Yasser Arafat's journey, he believed Palestine was lost by arms and guns, and it will be recovered like that. So for 2 decades, he fights Israeli civilians with guerrilla tactics, even not thinking twice about athletes in Munich in Germany, right? But in 1988, he realizes something. Where would he take his people with this fight? He does 2 things. He recognizes the two-state solution as the legit solution for the Palestinian issue. He also expresses regret about rejection of the two-state solution by the Arab leaders and the Palestinian leaders in 1947, when the United Nations gave the solution to the problem. Gaza and West Bank were not occupied by Israel from 1948 till 1967. And he held always Arab leaders responsible for the tragedy of the Palestinian people.
Yeah, had that war not, because you can't wage war, lose and say, okay, now we don't want war.
But the third thing he did, he said, I renounce violence against the state of Israel. I will engage. And I will engage on the principle of the two-state solution. I mean to say, because he was not an Islamist, because he was not a totalitarian in his ideology, he was a true nationalist in a liberation national spirits of the time.
And that's the closest they came to peace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what has happened, by the way, it's a very remarkable history. When Arafat talked to the Israelis and had this Oslo peace process, Israelis lost a prime minister for that peace process. You know what was Arafat called in the streets of Gaza and West Bank by Hamas in the year 1992 and 1993? A traitor.
Yeah.
And worst abuse at him. You are a weak old man who now can't fight, and hence you are getting sold to the American money. Yeah. So I think in the context of the Palestinian national movement, if you really go through it, you realize that Hamas hasn't done really...
In fact, I was talking to, and I just like Manisha to come
beautiful things to it.
No, before I close with the anti-Semitism, Mani, if you have any thoughts. But on this, I was discussing with Dhanya, who's in town, by the way, on the comparison between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And you can come across many videos of Malcolm X being extremely nasty, saying about Martin Luther King and how he is, well, I don't know if he used the word sellout, but he indicates that he does not represent the true words. Because Malcolm X, so I think it's a personality. Some people just enjoy fighting. It's cathartic for them. I genuinely do. They just enjoy the battle. And they don't want peace. And there will always be those elements in any grouping. I think many of the right-wing loons in India, it's not like they want India free of Muslims. Then they'll want it free of one community, then free of another community. They will always find someone, because it is just too exciting. I mean, they get their thrill out of fighting. And they feel virtuous by that. And history will judge who was more effective, Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King was called a sellout for his outreach, for saying we got to engage. And Malcolm X faction used to trash Luther King for that. And I think that kind of dichotomy exists in any struggle anywhere around the world.
But Abhinandan, it's sad. In a country of Gandhi, we don't need to ponder much into this irony of the human being. Gandhi was very smart to say, no violence will get you to peace. So no ends will justify the means. Listen, when you read Sari Nussabe in the year 2012, he writes 2 chapters on Gandhian thought of a state and peoplehood. And he really brings that political philosophy to the Palestinian people, saying it might take us long, but we will be better people with it.
Sure. Manisha, anything?
So, no, on all of this, I think I just can't take sides, I feel, because I think it's just a very complex thing. But in the sense of should Israel exist or not, Zionism has always been a colonial project and they've never been shy of saying that. I think they were just too late to the party. British had already done it, America, Canada, Australia. They at that point had moral backing. Like it was not for money or loot or plunder, but it was because, hey, we are not going to be safe anywhere in the world. And we've seen what's happened to our people since 500 years. So I think their colonial project had a sort of a moral backing after World War II, which meant that this is the only place where we can ensure safety and dignity for ourselves. And I guess it was true at that point. And if you look at the context of that time, countries were land grabs. Everyone grabbed land and, that was the way it was. And I also I think it has to be a two-state solution now, given what has happened. But to assume that Jews would have been safe in a Palestinian state, I'm not really sure, because anti-Semitism is pretty deep in the Arab-Muslim world, and it's not just because of the Israeli occupation.
Sure.
It has roots before that. So I don't know if that would have also been something that would have been very easy to kind of accommodate Jews. I don't think the Muslims or the Palestinians would have liked that or would have happened. There would have been war inevitably between the two
Whether that
forces.
is- Sure.
But yeah, I think blame the British. Whenever you see some fuck
I
up
agree with
anywhere
Can
in
I-
the world, it's
can
the
I tell you an
Brits.
Indian story to
I think
it?
all of us should actually not fight each other and focus on the Brits.
So Zionism as a settler colonial idea was a propaganda of the Soviet communism. And who caught it first in India? The socialist. Would you believe that Ram Manohar Lohia went to Israel? Jayaprakash Narayan went to Israel? Karpuri Thakur went to Israel? Ashok Mehta went to Israel? In the first 2 decades, by the way, this is why I was in Israel in October 2023. I was doing my research at Ben Gurion University for 2 years, reading the letters of the Indian socialists who went and stayed in Israel and did a great amount of collaboration.
And provided the legitimacy that it needed. to do
No,
this.
no,
No?
no. They were ideological.
Okay.
Zionism was a socialist and a democratic movement, not communist.
Right.
And Jayaprakash Narayan.
So that was the overlap basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
So sometimes we do fallacy that no, they became ideological. Human beings don't do business without ideas. So there was a time in the 1950s and 60s, the tall figures of the Indian left and the socialist movement were in Israel. When I tell this to many of the leftist friends, they said, no, I need to check. I said, you won't be able to check before my article comes out.
So when
Because
is it
there
coming out? We'd like to see that. You've quoted from these letters?
I have extensively written on
Because
this
at that
material.
time, they were the downtrodden. It's like today, if
Yeah,
Dalits were to rise
No,
up and say that,
Manisha,
look,
it's
the only
more
way
than
we can have
downtrodden.
dignity is...
No, but they are debating. Jayaprakash Narayan is fighting the Communist Party in the parliament, saying, no, you don't really have to take a side on this question because Zionism is legit. It's not colonial project.
Well, we look forward to these
But
letters.
Zionists themselves were very happy to describe themselves as colonial. I mean, there was the Jewish Association of Colonized. I mean, I think they were pretty okay with the idea of taking what's theirs and displacing people who happen to be there.
Anyway, but
It happened badly for the Palestinian history. I agree. Nobody denies that there was unfairness and injustice involved. But to not acknowledge that Zionism was a legit national movement and to credit that it was a creation of the Western imperialism is really a fallacy. And Indian socialists and the left scholars of the 50s and 60s were far more nuanced, by the way. They were in the thick of the British colonialism. They could have easily, taken benefit of this rhetoric against, Israel
all
or
that
Americans. They didn't.
I think going into history also, though, has its... limitations, because what
Yes.
we've seen unfold over the last 10 years, it just
It's
doesn't
true.
matter how it came about.
One thing I can share with you.
What they've gone and done is
No, the one thing I can tell you,
I guess
Israel changed for many of these socialist leaders in 1967 when it occupied West Bank and Gaza.
And also, it's been moving. It's been fluid. I don't think any position. But on this now, I'd just like to close on this and just quickly, if you can tell me, because anti-Semitism is a word I've seen thrown around very loosely and carelessly by people in America on both sides of the ideological divide, especially. Any criticism of Israel is very conveniently described as anti-Semitism, which I think is nonsense. But at the same time, I wasn't aware, and I just recently heard a podcast. I think it was a New York Times podcast only, where some of the slogans actually, some of these US universities saw students chanting. Oh my God, I did not know that was happening as well. Which is why I think the Republicans kind of rode that wave. And while it happened in very small, isolated pockets of universities, it was kind of brushed off. And I think that is also dangerous. Of course, now what's happening is, of course, we can't compare to India. India, you can say anything against Muslims and it is normalized as if it's not a big deal. But anti-Semitism as a concept, how is it defined? And especially in this age where it is being used so loosely, do you wear that burden of being a scholar of anti-Semitism and you want to distance yourself from it because everyone is payloading that word to justify their slogans or actions?
Yes, it's really tricky and it's extremely misused, and I think a great amount of misuse came from the Jewish and the Israeli leaders to shut the criticism of Israel. So I think they should have held the sanctity of this concept because it was actually, conceived for their sufferings. In simple terms, any prejudice and bias, like recently, now I cannot name this person, but I follow him on the YouTube. He's one of the UPSC coaching professors, very good. Recently joined a party that you were very fondly associated once with.
Oh, really? So many.
I don't name it, but I will tell you later.
So difficult.
But un sahab ne abhi kaha, he said, why India doesn't criticize Israel at this moment when the whole world is doing it? Not because of Narendra Modi and right wing. No. Jews control the world banks. Jews control America.
That trope.
What will happen?
Age-old trope.
I was shocked. He's an intelligent man. On many issues, I appreciate him. But the convenience with which he could produce one of the classical anti-Semitic thought is bewildering in India. So I think there is a terrible amount of reproduction of things that were really carried with bias and prejudice against the Jews. And you're right, in many of the American universities, slogans against Jews, slogans against Israelis in general, and then the right-wing government of Israel or the right of Israel to exist were all misused. So there is a deep worry about it. It's true. Even a country like UK, by the way. Now, UK went against Israeli threats and American threats and recognized the Palestinian state. They did it. Simultaneously, they have also constituted a national task force to curb anti-Semitism in the UK.
Although I think they did it very late, but it is consistent. Yeah. It is consistent with a very huge injustice has to take place for a corrective measure. Slavery would have to happen for, the world to recognize, oh my God, US needs to course correct. Colonialism, such a huge injustice has to happen in order to recognize, oh my God, those guys are wrong. And I think in this case, something really ugly of just the killing of thousands, tens of thousands of children and civilians in Palestine had to happen for this to be recognized. But with that, I would like to wind up this hafta, but we have the emails to read, your feedback. But before that, let me thank our scholar who has come. But before you go, would you like to recommend something that could enrich the lives of our listeners?
Yes, I think I will repeat Sari Nussabe's recommendation. I think the world really emotionally feels for the Palestinians, and one would really do better to know their history.
All right.
From their own person. So, What is a Palestinian State Worth is a great read in these times when the violence has really become the symbol of that region and those people. Second, there is a book by an Israeli scholar, Benny Morris, who was made pariah because he wrote the first book in 1988 by using the word Palestinian refugees. Before that, Israeli mainstream history was Arabs left for some Arab countries.
Right.
There were no Palestinian people as such. Imagine Benny Morris wrote the first book in 1988 and put the Palestinian refugee problem on the top. And he called David Ben-Gurion the greatest expeller in the region because there were people expelled, close to 1 million. So he wrote this very fabulous book called Virtuous Victims. What happens when you have this deep-seated self-righteousness and you refuse to see the legitimacy of the other because you are in a victimhood? So you cannot empathize. You can only have anger and sympathy and solidarity for yourself. How can you have responsibility to also recognize the other? So I think Virtuous, Righteous Victims is a fabulous book which captures the history of the Middle East through the Palestinian and the Israeli events and the actors and the key ideas. I think Benny Morris and Sari Nusabeh would be my 2 recommendations, knowing the fact that we really need to know the history of the people.
This reminds me of this really fascinating thing that Jaipur Lit Fest, one of these Jewish authors, Howard Jacobson, had said. He's pretty famous. He's written a lot of books on Jewish identity. He said that you should stop. When people say, how can victims of Holocaust do this? He said that the Holocaust was not a finishing school, that you went through it and came out glorious and great and kind.
Traumatized.
You actually come out of it really victimized and with a very horrid view of the world and what it's capable of. And to not let that happen again, you're going to be way more hardened than somebody who recognizes all the things like humanity or whatever.
Dr. Khinvraj, Jangid, thank you so much for coming. A pleasure.
Mehrbani, I follow your work since I was a student at JNU.
Oh, really?
I traveled for you from Sonipat.
Thank you so much. Now for the emails, your feedback. We only entertain the feedback of subscribers. So if you're a subscriber, you can click on the link in the show notes or just mail us at podcasts@newslaundry.com. I repeat, podcasts@newslaundry.com. Do write Hafta so that it comes to the right podcast. And please tell us what we are doing right, what we're doing wrong, what you'd like us to do more of, and what you would like to do, and what you would like us to do less of. So please go ahead. Today's letters have been curated by the one and only Shardool. So let's see, is there any trend to what he has picked?
Stafford says, interesting video, especially your chat about the future of media and Indian politics. I have one tiny disagreement though. One of you all likened Mamdani to a meme leader. Zohran was a local representative in New York State Assembly. He worked on a ground-up campaign, spoke to regular people on what they wanted from their mayor and built his campaign message around it. He's fighting the establishment and by the looks of it, he's winning. I think it's important for us to recognize good politics, highlight good campaigns that focus on people. We often ask ourselves why we do not have good politics and a strong opposition. Maybe a campaign like Zohran's is the answer. Who called him a meme leader?
Sudipto did. I disagree, but I don't want to get into that because that is not what we're discussing. And also, it's slightly biased. Zohran was a little, I think, 5-year-old when we were shooting Monsoon Wedding. His mother, Meera Nair, I worked with, and he was this little, really smart kid. So, like all our Indian uncle, beta, हमारी गोदी में खेला न्यूयॉर्क का मेयर है ना, हमारी गोदी में खेला बेटा.
Biased uncle for his nephew.
Visa चाहिए, अभी दिलवा देते हैं बेटा. But I think he got 30,000 volunteers for his campaign, man.
Yeah.
He took on someone who had raised millions.
Yeah.
So I don't agree he's a meme leader. He actually had boots on ground who were volunteering for him, not just swiping up and swiping down and clicking. So yeah.
See, and also end of the day, he has mastered social media game. That is also why I think it's very easy to dismiss him as a meme leader.
It's like when people say, oh, you're a YouTuber, when they want to dismiss you.
So what?
Yogesh Chandra says, hello, Hafta peeps. Kudos for reporting on Indian public spaces. Being an autistic person with spatial awareness issues, walking outside in India is like playing that chicken crossing game in which you can even lose your safety or even life. I hope you're covering that as well. I will support the project as soon as I receive my salary. Also, when is the next Newslaundry app update coming? It is much needed. I would also recommend people to read Manu Joseph's latest book. It's much cheaper in ebook format. My other recommendations are below. The Myth of the Good Old Days. In my opinion, every Indian must go through all these recommendations, including Manu's books, especially pensioner Sanghi uncles who didn't even protest while they were getting snipped forcefully by Congress and have suddenly become Hindu shades while they have 1 foot on the grave.
Yogesh, you don't mince your words.
My God.
Touche, Yogesh, fellow autistic. But I have to say one thing. He mentioned it, so I remembered. A few weeks ago, there was a letter who was saying that Newslaundry should choose the right Manu Joseph and all. Well, I would say already has. If you don't know, my name was Manu, official name long
Oh, was
ago.
it? All right, before you took Shardool. Interesting.
Amrinder Singh Hundal says, my dear Sekhri Saab, our PM wasn't stopped by farmers. It was all Indian media bullshit. Our PM stopped on a flyover in village Pyarena. Farmers were beneath the flyover bridge. Leave farmers or their tractor trolleys. Not a dog was let on the road all the way up to the rally ground that day. That day it was raining and there were empty chairs at the rally place. So our supreme leader got off the chopper at Bhatinda and decided to travel by road, 2 hours journey, and buy time for the chairs to fill up. He was 6 kilometers from the rally place in Firozpur and his convoy suddenly stopped over the FOB and lurked there for 15-20 minutes. Mainstream channels started crying that PM is under threat. No doubt those farmers who were beneath the FOB shouted slogans and he returned. Wo flyover thing was a bit... Raman says, dear TNM NL team, just finished listening to Hafta in 2 South Central episode and oh my, it was like a total page turner in audio form. I hung on every word, pushing my earbuds deep to ensure I did not miss a word and at the same time eagerly awaiting what the next speaker had to say. Every word spoken was pure gold, especially since Abhinandan's expletives, Delhi flair were beeped out. They were beeped out.
I guess so because
Wow.
Dhanya doesn't allow bad language.
This is the best podcast episode I've ever tuned into. It's a great idea to keep this special episode outside the paywall. I've already shared the link with a bunch of friends, hoping that it nudges them to subscribe. Amen to Sudipto's prediction, how times shall changing. Here's hoping I stick around long enough to cheer on the good stuff unfolding. You're all killing it. Keep the magic coming. Yours in exuberance.
Thank you so much,
How
Raman.
Abhilasha says, hi NL team, I'm a regular listener to Hafta. I appreciate its long format as it delves into topic in depth and helps understand what's going on instead of just creating triggering emotions when one reads just simple headlines given out by mainstream media outlets. On a lighter note, in your recent Hafta, I found it entertaining when Abhinandan talked and joked about mean comments on him. I think having a segment where the familiar NL team members read mean comments on them would be a fun thing to do. But of course, only if they're okay with it. Yeah, actually we did this on our 13th.
We should actually.
10th
We should make it as a
anniversary, we did
regular
it.
thing.
But we should do it regularly because some of them are just very creative. R says, the NL-TNM crossover. Because Abhinandan brings it up so frequently, I just had to write in to say that the slackening pace of funding for urban elite story might not necessarily be because we fear scrutiny. I think many of us rely on thoughtful, thought-provoking journalism to examine our own biases and improve. However, as a salaried professional who doesn't make much but subscribes to Wire, Caravan, Scroll, Newslaundry, News Minute separately and also succumbs to appeals for funds for Gaza, floods in India, different charities, sometimes there just isn't enough money to fund individual campaigns. Which is why I think Josie's idea of expanding reach is critical. Harnessing new tech for this does seem like the best way to go, although I must confess I'm not sure how. All the best. At any rate, keep up the good work. Your work is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
We have a new Sena project up. Bihar election, I'm sure all of you are keen. We have a wonderful team that will go there. Basant, Atul and Srinivasan Jain, accompanied with a wonderful team of producers. So do contribute. Here's a QR code. Link is in the show notes. And now let's get the recommendations. Jayashree, let's start with you.
Just 2 recommendations. So the first is a piece called How's Arab? It's first-person story of a fact checker who worked at the New Yorker, except that he doesn't name the New Yorker, but he describes it so well that you know it's the New Yorker. And he was the magazine's only Arab employee, and he was working there when October 7th happened. So he writes about a lot of things. He writes about what home means to him, the incredible pressure on being the token Arab who needs to speak out, but also he really wants to bring nuance to the kind of coverage and hate he's seeing online. And also he finally gave up. And I mean, it's a bit sad, but I really enjoyed this characterization of his liberal colleagues. He says, at work, it was surprising to be surrounded by demonstrably smart people who believed, for example, that Donald Trump's election was somehow surprising, that meaningful wealth redistribution was beyond the political pale, or that individual human beings and not systems were history's main actors. He says that they felt these were all aberrations and deviations from the American norm that would eventually be corrected when the arc of the moral universe finally got around to them. And I think this describes liberalism quite beautifully. So I enjoyed it. It's a very good piece. It's very short, so you can read it in like 10 minutes and then go for lunch. And I'm recommending a fiction book because I haven't in a long time. It's called The Wild Hunt by Emma Sekhri. It's set in a remote, isolated island off the coast of Scotland, where locals are not only dealing with the horrors that immediately followed World War II, but also supernatural horrors epitomized by the souls of the dead that visit them every October. And this sounds very grim, but it's actually very melodic and beautiful and oddly uplifting. So please read it. It's good.
Okay. Manisha?
Nice book recommendation. I'm going to recommend the 3-part series by our colleague Basant Kumar on Uttarakhand government's obnoxious spend on promoting itself. All 3 parts are out. The second part is my favorite, where we discover that the Time and Economist also got ads over 1 crore from the Dhami government, the BJP government, saying that, how amazing it is. Imagine the kind of money that they're putting into The Economist.
Matlab, The Economist is getting ads from Dhami government.
And I think you, especially subscribers, should read it. Non-subscribers also read it, just to also understand the kind of money that's out there floating around for those who want to make money in the name of journalism, and how tough it is for people to actually reject that whole system, which we have at Newslaundry. But when we do that, it shouldn't mean that we are poor. So,
understand our sacrifice.
This is understand our sacrifice is a roundabout way of saying, please subscribe, because this is a lot of money. I mean, 300 crore, 5 years, just print. Crazy amount of money gone into obscure magazines, who, I don't know what journalism they've done. It is just friends, some are just saying Dhami is great, some are just saying, oh look, Uttarakhand is now the greatest state in the world. But the kind of money that people can make in this profession by not doing journalism is just mind-blowing.
And the context of, you have to understand, Pushkar Singh Dhami is that CM who, it was so difficult for him to win his seat every election.
He's not within his own party.
Right.
This is a state that has had land cracks, floods after flood every season. And the kind of money they spend on this is just crazy. But also, I just want everyone to understand what it takes to reject this large swaths of money which we've done.
I also have a related recommendation.
Which means you should support us.
Yes.
Shouldn't mean कि हम मतलब good intentions should be rewarded.
Actually. Yes.
You want my
Shardool.
recommendation? So this is a very a sentimental time for me, everybody knows. So my recommendations are...
Why should everybody know it's a sentimental
everybody
time?
knows, because I was very morose in the earlier years.
Okay.
Ab to main fir bhi theek hu. So 3 recommendations which are extremely personal, but some people may like it. So the first one is a game called Helldivers 2. I think Abhinandan and Manisha will like it because it's a sort of commentary on US terms and very snarky. Like, I'll give you one quote. The game name is Helldivers 2. Like, one of the favorite quotes is, managed democracy offers absolute freedom from the burden of choice. So it's like you are on campaign forever. So it's a very nice game. The rest of the 2 are the same. I give in Charcha also 2 of my favorite songs. The one is, and because this around Diwali there's a debate of crackers and religion and culture and divide. So Kana Yari is a 2022 song. It's a Balochi song, and Eva B, Wahab Bukti and Kaifi Khalil collaborated. It has Balochi folk music and rap music, which is from Black America. And if you know Indian languages, if you pay attention, you will understand what they're saying, some of the words. So again, that context goes. The other one is in July 2015, Pandit Rakesh Chaurasia and Ustad Zakir Hussain had a concert in Sweden. And they ended that concert with a small piece which was written and composed by Ustad Zakir Hussain for his granddaughter who was newly born, for his daughter's daughter. And it's such a beautiful flute and tabla piece. And to signify, I personally like them also, that these people who are trying to divide us, वो कर नहीं पाएंगे. ये जड़ें बहुत गहरी हैं.
Very upbeat, very encouraging. I have 2 recommendations. One is a podcast series from CBC News and Politics, The Making of Musk. I think I really like these, which is why I had once recommended the Economist podcast. I think it was an 8-part series on Xi, the premier of China, to really get an insight into what makes a person tick, how they think. If you can get a really well-made and well-researched podcast on their growing years and what are the contexts that they grew up in, it gives you a lot, and it kind of explains a lot of their behavior. I think it's fantastic. And it also explains why Trump bol raha hu. Musk is such a horribly lunatic why he's such a horrible lunatic. The second is a video that is going viral in Uttarakhand ever since Newslaundry did this expose. So it is not on YouTube. It is just being shared on
WhatsApp. And it's so fake. AI.
It is. So I have been told who has initiated this. It is some people who have got hit by our story there. So this has been shared extensively in Uttarakhand. So I just thought those of you chomus who are behind this, give you a helping hand. And we will play some clips of it here so that, you know, our audience also gets to know that when you do a story which calls out the bullshit that states like Uttarakhand and their leader is doing, this is the pushback that you get. The C-grade production qualities of this, next time, those of you who've done this, just call me directly. I will make a better video than this for you, more credible, better production values, and I will charge you very minor fee. Not as much as you pay to the others.
राष्ट्र विरोधी साजिशकर्ताओं के निशाने पर क्यों है उत्तराखंड? कुछ वामपंथी पत्रकार क्यों बन रहे? इसके संवाहक आज हम एक सनसनीखेज खुलासा करने जा रहे हैं। वामपंथी न्यूज पोर्टल न्यूज लॉन्ड्री से पिछले 2 वर्षों में 7.5 करोड़ कैश लिया और पैसा न्यूज लॉन्ड्री के पास हवाला के माध्यम से आया। ये न्यूज लॉन्ड्री वही न्यूज पोर्टल है जिसके ऊपर 2020-21 में इनकम टैक्स की रेड पड़ चुकी है।
On that note, thank you so much. Happy Diwali. Thank you to our wonderful producers Ashish and Amit. Thank you, Anil. 3 A's. Anil, Ashish, Amit. And Manisha Pande.
Triple A.
Shardool, Katyayan.
Yes.
Jayashree.
Thank you.
And thank you, the rest of you, for supporting us. This podcast, as a Diwali gift, is outside the paywall.
Yay! Fui! How did we start?
Yes. Fui. Something like fui. But don't let people divide you. Diwali is beautiful.
Yes, it is. Adios.